talking about what the General Assembly has done and how we'll be partners in moving forward on education and the like. But when we came on board about 3 years ago, we found some problems, and we have made some steps in trying to improve them. And our strategy was clear. We wanted a better North Carolina. And what that basically means is a budget where we have certainty and a balanced budget. Education, where we want to make sure that the workforce for North Carolina is the best and the brightest and the most prepared and the most skilled. And all of these factors surrounding what is the North Carolina's competitive economy are critical for that. Now, of course, transportation, another part, will be that we want to move people and goods not just across the state but across the globe. It gives our businesses in the state more opportunity for growth. And then also tax reform, which I spent a lot of time in, and something that we are trying to make North Carolina competitive. In that sense, we've moved from the 44th worst tax state in the country to the 17th best. And in that effort, we expect to have jobs growing and STEM part of that, education, STEM being part of that. Energy, our strategy was clear. What we were doing is trying to have a reliable and affordable source of energy, and what that means both for transportation and also for electricity production. We need to maintain ourselves as a competitive area for electric costs, and we will do so by that move forward in energy. And then regulatory reform, which we were trying to do a cost-benefit analysis on regulations to make sure they were indeed achieving their desired goal, and we're working on behalf of the people, both safety-wise, environmental, and employment, and also for the benefit of the business. So we had a strategy for a North Carolina competitive economy, which is absolutely hand in hand with what we're going to do for education. Again, STEM education, we're talking about preparing preparing our workforce for the jobs of the future. There's no other way to describe it, and as we proceed on with this, we'll find that again, if you don't have an adaptable workforce on science, technology, engineering, mathematics, those are the problem solvers of our society, those are the creators, the entrepreneurs, then very simply we will slip back. And one thing for sure, our goal is to make sure that North Carolina is the premier economy in the entire country, not just in the Southeast. And this is a very critical component along with the others in trying to achieve that goal. North Carolina's business climate is developed into one of the finest. We've taken a lot of steps in that direction, and in doing so, we will continue in that vein, following a better North Carolina pathway. And again, we're in the middle of a critical economic transformation. Prior to 1997, tobacco, textile, and furniture led the state. A lot of them were low-cost jobs or low-wage jobs. But having recognized that that's no longer part, we're talking about banking, financial services, technology, computers, and unfortunately, we have taken steps in that direction, and we'll continue to do so, not because we want to, because it's necessary if we're going to keep our state and our economy one of the tops, and also to be sure that we have jobs that are there for our citizens. Again, we're talking about a shift away from low-skilled, low-wage jobs to a high-skilled, knowledge-based jobs. And in doing so, very simply, there are steps that we can follow, and that's our pathway. Let's just take a moment to talk about a slide. And since 2010 to 2013, nearly 50% of the jobs were low-wage jobs that we added to the state of North Carolina. And that is not our goal. You cannot take care of a family on $9 and $10 an hour jobs. Our goal is the mid-wage up to, going to 20 and then higher. If we don't act selectively in the jobs that we either create in this state or recruit to this state, then we're shortchanging our citizens. And that's something that this General Assembly is focused on doing. North Carolina STEM education, and that is preparing jobs for the future. Our state, this is not new to North Carolina. If you look back in history, when we just were part of the original 13 colonies, North Carolina was one of the leading states in agriculture and technology, in business and furniture and the like. Then we had the Research Triangle as time went on, and so what that really did for us is this is the next step for us, which is something that for North Carolinians, it's not hard to move forward into the future. We've done it in the past, and we will continue to do so. Now, we're talking about strong educational standards. In that sense, what we're looking at is not just comparing North Carolina students against North Carolina. We're talking about comparing them against the Southeast and the entire nation. And more importantly, we have competitors in the globe. And what that means is that we have to have a national norm testing system that is not abusive, but will allow us to measure our performances so that we can be sure that our children are prepared for a productive future. And a lot of that includes being able to be involved with STEM education. Again, North Carolina in the past has a great history of public-private organizations promoting education innovation, both regionally and across the entire state. One example is North Carolina achieved or started as one of the original 11 core states with the multi-state STEM network, which originated in 2012 and continues doing its work in providing a good base of knowledge on what really constitutes STEM education and how it can be best moved forward. What else are we doing? Our business community is working hard together with the Jobs Commission in trying to identify what is critical as far as capable workforce, and a lot of local, public, and private initiatives have been set forward. The Job Commission and the Department of Public Instruction have worked in a bipartisan effort to align both educational requirements and workforce development. And I'll give you just one example. This General Assembly actually went forward and set forward guidelines so that the community college and DPI could work to have CTE program established so that the third and fourth year of high school will allow our high school students that aren't college bound to be able to get a vocational technical certificate. We want them to be able to graduate. We want them to graduate with a certificate of some form that will give them a job opportunity. And as you'll see, a high school diploma is no longer that ticket to the future. So again, we want to be able to offer that, and we have made that suggestion and that move forward. Of course, the STEM Learning Network has identified 500 public-private programs within the STEM Education Network. And then also, there are many initiatives that are strategically aligned with key state workforce development. I'll give you an example of something that we did get accomplished, and that's the unemployment insurance reform. We moved away from what was an unemployment benefit system to what is a new mission, and that is reemployment of the people and get them back qualified, back into the workforce. You can't just keep paying benefits. You need to get them retrained and prepared to enter those jobs. And that is, again, a little different because there likely isn't going to be on STEM directly, but they still have to have an opportunity for a job. And what you're talking about is 60% of the new jobs across the United States will be produced, will require at least some form of STEM education. And if you take a close look at this last recession, and whenever we finally get out of the Great Recession, we can actually see that the high unemployment numbers that were there were still many, many unfilled jobs, and we can show you that with the Division of Employment Security, that they are there, and those unfilled jobs are there primarily because of the fact that the employees don't have the skills for those jobs. The jobs are there, but we have to be sure that we have a core of students that are prepared with STEM education, with the qualities and the skills that will allow them to be prepared for the 21st century job. That is the responsibility and our responsibility, and we're going to meet that responsibility. Again, if you look at statistics coming from the Change the Equation organization study, there are 3.6 unemployed workers for every job in the United States. Now, in comparison, there is only one unemployed STEM worker for two unfilled STEM jobs. What that means, ladies and gentlemen, is the fact that we have not prepared our workforce for the jobs of the future. And that's something that we really need to do, and steps that we have taken in that direction. Now, many of the jobs go unfilled, just as we discussed before, simply because of the fact that there were the employees weren't skilled for them. One of the problems we face, and something that is a little disheartening, is if, just an example, in 2001, you look at the STEM education system going through, and what you see is roughly 4 million ninth graders take it through the next level, high school, college, so forth, majoring in STEM. And from that 4 million students in ninth grade, you actually deliver 167,000 STEM graduates. That's 4% of the entire ninth grade class. That's not enough to meet the needs of our society, and specifically for the needs in North Carolina now and into the future, because we do plan to grow in a significant way. North Carolina benefits from STEM already with the fact that we have 400,000 STEM-related jobs. Again, the STEM jobs are growing at a rate of 23% faster than all other sectors. And if we don't have a workforce with that educational skill level, then very simply, North Carolina's goal to be the best economic engine in the country is going to be diminished because, again, workforce and education are a critical component of that strategy that we're setting forward. We anticipate 70,000 new jobs, STEM-related jobs by 2020, and something that talks about economic growth and development, which is something that this legislature is very interested in, is the fact that if you look at STEM-paying jobs, there's 64%, they pay 64% better than any other job in North Carolina. So it is a rewarding opportunity if we can not only have those students prepared to enter into STEM education, but more importantly, be willing to recruit it into that sense. Okay, why is STEM? Why STEM now? 63% of the STEM jobs requiring at least 2 years of credentials pay more than any other non-STEM job. We've talked about that. Our education system, ladies and gentlemen, our education system is not producing enough STEM-capable students and therefore workers to keep pace with what we're doing in North Carolina. Another graph showing about the skill levels. And if you look at the high skill level, North Carolina in 2009, and I'm sure these numbers are comparable, we had 33% more people available than the jobs. But if you look at the middle skill level, we actually have more jobs, more jobs that are available. Unfortunately, we don't have the workers for it. So again, we know what our mission is, and it's something that we will continue to do. I won't spend too much time on this slide. It shows the breakdown of educational distribution of jobs with the different levels. And as you'll see, high school no longer really achieves that goal unless we can go into some CTE type programs. Again, 91% of those jobs will require post-secondary education and training in some form of STEM training. Excuse me. The occupational distribution that we need to be looking at over the next decade is simply, and you can see the percentages, computers is going to represent nearly 49%. We have to have people that are prepared in computer technicians, programmers, scientists, and the like. But you can see the breakdown on mathematicians, engineers, life science, and life and physical scientists, all very critical for a growing 21st century economy, which is what North Carolina is destined to be. Okay, you can see, again, the different qualifications, and bottom line is bachelor, master's degree, and the post-secondary education requirements for STEM. But again, there is an unmet need, as we talked about earlier, on CTE as being an alternative to dropping out of high school. Our state can create a competitive advantage by enhancing the career training education programs as we described, specifically in manufacturing, IT, health science, and agribusiness. And the workforce development programs must integrate with the secondary school curriculums and career development pathways, which, again, will allow us to have a workforce that will be very attractive for businesses either to grow here or to move here. All of what I've just described to you, and recognizing that this General Assembly is there and committed to making the changes that are needed to allow us to move forward, cannot occur. We cannot recruit and try to encourage people, our children, into STEM education if we have problems as basic as this. And if you look at the reading achievement levels, and this is again the NAEP score, National Kids Count, you can see from 2005 to 2013, but the bottom line is when you have roughly 65% of the children not reading at proficient level, not only are they hurting themselves in any future, but they are also no longer able to move into a STEM education, which require a high level of reading proficiency and math proficiency. We can't just shove this under the rug and say, look how great we're doing, because the bottom line is when you look and peel back the onion, you can see that we're not achieving the goals that are necessary for us to have a quality workforce and also offer our children an opportunity for the future. As you can see, 65% of the students in North Carolina are not reading at grade level. Bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, if you can't read, you can't learn. And that is why we put forward the Read to Achieve program to mandate the fact that no child should be socially promoted forward without being able to read. If you can read, you can learn and have every chance for success in life. And unfortunately, that's not what's happening today. And it is, we've taken some steps that will move us in that direction. And we're talking about significant differences in higher and lower income. You're talking about lower income children even are less likely to be reading at grade level. And bottom line behind that is that, again, we just can't write them off. That's not fair to them, and it's not fair to our society or our state. So that's something that our General Assembly is very aggressive in trying to solve. If you want to talk about reading, you can see the scores there. You can also talk about mathematics. One thing that's frustrating is North Carolina is above the national average, but who calls a national average of 41% successful? All right. If we aren't in the, 70 and 80%, and shame on us, and it should be 100%, because we are capable of doing it. But if we accept this as acceptable and say, look how great North Carolina is, we've got 45% of our children prepared at that level. Ladies and gentlemen, that is shortchanging them, shortchanging North Carolina, and this General Assembly is going to do whatever it needs to do to overcome that. Sorry for the quick presentation. I wanted to make sure you had a view of what we were trying to do and a vision of it. We stand side by side with you in promoting STEM education. We recognize the value of it, the importance of it, and especially as we're moving forward with a better North Carolina, we can work hand in hand to get this done. Thank you, and I think we'll answer some questions later.
It's definitely been a long day. All right. Next up, we have Representative Tom Murry. Representative Murry represents the 41st District, which is housed in Wake County. He is a pharmacist by training and also an attorney. His committee assignments in General Assembly include chairing the Commerce and Job Development Committee and the Appropriations Subcommittee on Natural and Economic Resources. He also chairs the Joint Legislative Economic Development and Global Engagement Oversight Committee. As the son of a school teacher and as someone working in the STEM field, we are eager to hear the remarks Representative Murry brings us today. Please join me in welcoming Representative Tom Murry.
Thank you so much for this invitation. I'm humbled to be part of a panel that contains Dr. Rucho. That was what he was known for many years before he became Senator Rucho, and so it's always good to have people with diverse backgrounds serving in the North Carolina General Assembly. And as the only pharmacist in the General Assembly, I can tell you, I enjoy getting questions about drugs on the House floor. And so I tell folks, being a pharmacist and an attorney, I can fill your prescription or write your will. I just hope I don't have to do that on the same day. And so my wife and I moved here about 11 years ago because she got a job in the Research Triangle Park. That's what brought me to North Carolina, was a job. And so I think the end point of the excellent presentation that Senator Rucho made is jobs. And that's what STEM means to me. That's what it means to me personally here in North Carolina. My wife's a pharmacist just like me, and she got a job in the Research Triangle Park because North Carolina was the right place and had the right economic development environment to create those jobs. The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. And the second best time to plant a tree is today. And so that's this conversation that we're having, in my opinion. I had the pleasure of serving on the Economic Development Board appointed by Speaker Tom Tillis, and we just published a report in January. I just sent it to Donnie, and I hope I hope you've had a chance to look at it, but I'm pretty confident in saying that probably you haven't had a chance to look at it. So let me tell you a little bit about what is in the economic development plan related specifically to STEM. And it's very apropos that I'm having this conversation here. I spent all day today on NC State's campus talking about smart grid technology. And so that is the ultimate application of STEM education. And on page 14 of the economic development report, under our innovation and entrepreneurship section, number one is connecting university innovation into jobs. What NC State has been able to do here on Centennial campus, having private sector investment sitting right next to post-secondary and education, where a student can go to class in the morning, do an internship in the afternoon, and by the time they're ready to walk across the stage, they've got a job waiting on them in the same building that they did both of those in. That can happen all on this campus. That is connecting STEM education to job creation. And it's happening right here at NC State, and it's unique. That's the challenge, and that's what that bullet point means to me, connecting university research to jobs. People going through PhD programs, a lot of times they just keep on asking questions, and that's generally what research ends up happening is it's just question after question after question, and we never get the answer. We got to answer the problem. Eventually, we've got to have an answer. The smart grid issue is begging for an answer right now. We've got some significant challenges when you think about energy production in our country right now. If you look at the number of nuclear facilities that'll be going offline, or the coal facilities that'll be going offline, and how do you add a significant and growing renewable portfolio that has challenges when a cloud comes over? And so how do you balance all that with a 100-year-old grid? And so that is a question that is begging for an answer. It's going on right here in NC State. We're gonna tackle it. We're tackling it with both arms. And so that's the end point for me for the presentation that Senator Rucho made on why we need to focus on reading at younger ages and focus on certain these things. The end point is answering the tough questions that the country, the world is asking right now. I recently had a chance to lead a delegation of legislators and business leaders and people from the university system to India. Spent 10 days in India. Went to Mumbai and Bangalore and Delhi, and then took a little side trip over to see the Taj Mahal. And so India has 1.3 billion people. 40% of the country has no electricity. Another 40% of the country has electricity less than 6 hours a day. So triple the size of our country with basically spotty electricity. They've completely leapfrogged the grid. They're putting solar panels on huts to charge their cell phones because they also don't have landlines. And so that's happening here at NC State. We're leapfrogging technologies within the existing first world infrastructure. So, and so I think what we're doing here at NC State through connecting STEM education to the private sector to solve those problems helps the world. It helps the world. And so that's a major bullet point that you can see in the economic development report. Another goal, overarching goal, is attracting the creative class as well as that retiree class to North Carolina. I think some of the tax reform efforts that Forbes wrote an article saying 3 new reasons to retire to North Carolina. I'm cool with that. I'm plenty fine of folks coming to North Carolina, bringing their expertise and knowledge with them, and bringing their retirement income too. Because we can harness the retiree community to help our students see and help our innovators see the light at the end of the tunnel on why they're investing so much time in this difficult coursework. I can tell you, pharmacy school is not easy. Going to engineering school is not easy. My sister's a civil engineer, and so I'll say that again. My sister is a civil engineer. I've got 2 daughters, 10 and 7. My oldest daughter entered a statewide competition in math. She's finished second in the state. So I guess it skips a generation, I guess. I don't know how that works for my sister, but getting females engaged in the engineering profession and seeing successful retired females who did it that's the light at the end of the tunnel. You can do this. My sister had a very rewarding career, or is having a very rewarding career in engineering, and she got the world handed to her because she was the girl in her year, in her program. The girl. There was only one, and that was not that long ago. She's younger than me, and so I use her as a poster child for my own daughters to show them that this is, she's building roads. She's making roads better. That's what she's doing for a living. So that attracting that creative class and retiree population in North Carolina helps show our students the end point on why it's important to focus on that. And so that's a major area of focus for our economic development plan as well. And then lastly, one of the other goals on that, if you're interested in reading our plan to attract the creative class and retiree, that's on page 15 of the report. On page 16 of the report, you can see our plan on how to develop and retain a globally competitive workforce with the knowledge and skills ready and that are needed for high growth and sustainable jobs. Career to techno education is number one on that. It's number one on that list. That CTE program cannot be understated. It gives a reason for the 22% of children in North Carolina who drop out to stay in school. You will never help a STEM company if you don't graduate from high school. And we're still losing 22% of our kids. 22%. And that's a record high. That's a record high graduation rate, by the way. And so, but 22% is still way too high. Those kids will never produce, or are stunted from the beginning by dropping out. And this is a way to keep them in school, give them a reason. You don't have to go get a bachelor's degree to be successful. Career technical education, getting that 2-year associate's degree, advanced manufacturing, that helps make things right here in North Carolina. There's nothing more rewarding than to see a Lenovo box get shipped out of our state across the globe, and on the front of it, it says made in North Carolina. And that's what career technical education means to me, and we are focusing on that as part of our economic development plan. So I hope you'll take time. I sent this to Donnie, as I mentioned. I hope, Donnie, that you'll forward it to everybody, even the folks listening online. If you have any specific questions about the report, like I said, I was on the board. I can help connect you with some commerce folks on specific areas in the report. But this is our roadmap. This is the roadmap from an economic development perspective on how we're going to take the STEM infrastructure that we have and put it on fire, light it on fire, and continue to grow jobs right here in North Carolina, the good jobs that keeps North Carolina competitive globally. And it's, like I said, STEM's been very good to me. I spent a whole lot of time in labs going through school, and I can tell you that experience on learning how to learn, I think helps having that kind of background helps me as a policymaker as well, and I hope that we can have a productive dialogue on how we can continue to move the needle on improving the infrastructure in North Carolina to grow good jobs right here in our state.
Is that good? Okay. So my first question is for you, Senator Rucho. Less than a month ago, a group of business leaders in life sciences gathered in this room to talk about repositioning North Carolina as a regulatory science center of excellence. And we were really privileged to have Secretary Sharon Decker here to address the group. Interestingly, when the group asked her about her efforts to recruit new life science companies to North Carolina, and they wanted to know what the best selling point was, she said what had been standing in the way of recruitment prior to this year had been a sense of uncertainty in North Carolina, and that the tax reform, which you played such a critical role in moving ahead, really had made a huge difference. So I figure it would be great to know, what is your next personal priority? You showed us that ecosystem with energy and regulations and education, lots of things the General Assembly should be and is working on. But for you personally, what's the next push point?
Thank you. That's a great question, and I wish I could be personally involved. I need 26 votes in the Senate, I need 61 in the House, and I need a governor. It isn't quite like when we're our business and we make a decision and say, you know what, in my dental practice, we're going to do something today, and I say, yeah, we're going to, and it gets done. Unfortunately, we have to convince a few other folks. But our vision for North Carolina, and recognizing that there's no one silver bullet, and Secretary Decker has been a real treat to work with. She is an exciting, energetic individual, and what we're trying to do is give her a North Carolina that she can sell. And by doing so in the tax reform area, we reduced 25% off the top personal rate of income tax and set a flat rate, and we reduced the corporate rate. What this is all trying to do is keep businesses, the organic businesses that North Carolina has, the ones that they employ North Carolinians here and not over in my county. They go to South Carolina and they're gone from us. The second thing is we're trying to recruit the best and the brightest businesses here. You look at economies like Texas, like Florida, like Tennessee, like Washington State, with a zero personal income tax. There is article after article. Businesses go to a state that have a zero personal income tax, and we're better than Texas. Okay, we have a better place to live. Can you imagine what we're going to be like when we can get a zero personal income tax? Yes, it requires us to change a little bit the way we do business. We can't have the uncertainty of a budget deficits. When we took it over, we had a $2.5 billion shortfall. Businesses look at North Carolina, are you all in control over there, or what's going on? So we got that set up. We took care of the unemployment insurance problem, which was insolvent and wasn't going to be available for the next group of people that needed benefits. We did, and we could spend 30, 40 minutes talking about it. Tax reform was a major part of what we want to make as a competitive economic economy in North Carolina. And in doing so, we are looking at some point of getting to zero personal income tax. And in doing so, we would probably go to a consumption-based tax on goods and services, broadening the base, lowering the rates. And what this does, and every economist will tell you, every time you can take a business decision away from because of the tax policy, it is a better way of rewarding entrepreneurship, innovation, all the good things that made America great to begin with, and can make North Carolina better than any other state in the country. I hope that at least gives you a vision of what we're trying to do.
It does. Thank you. It was actually very interesting to hear these people in life sciences, apropos of the conversation we're having about jobs in STEM, really focus in on this issue of what the tax climate looks like in North Carolina. I'd like to address my second question to Representative Murray. So Senator Rucho is talking about being able to create these enterprises that are based on STEM and hiring people who've got STEM skills. And you are attracted to North Carolina, to this region of North Carolina, because we've got lots of those kinds of jobs and people around. I am struck that yesterday we hosted a webinar that focused on rural healthcare innovations, and today we released a report on manufacturing that focuses on what's happening in manufacturing in rural communities. And the hard questions that got asked today got asked of John Harden from the Department of Commerce, which is, this is all great, but what does it mean for rural North Carolina? It'd be great if you could share with us a little bit about how the Economic Development Board in particular talked about this issue, and how can we be sure that the prosperity that we're creating, particularly around STEM industries and jobs, is a widely shared prosperity?
Certainly. So when you go home and read the Economic Development Report, on page 18, the goal is spread prosperity, jobs, and investment to the rural areas of the state. It starts on page 18, and at the end of the day, in a lot of when you're talking about rural North Carolina, you're going to be talking about agriculture. Agriculture in North Carolina is a $77 billion industry in the state of North Carolina. Just think about that. Think about that. When I talk to the folks over at Ag, 'cause I found this out once I got to be chair of the Natural and Economic Resources Subcommittee and Appropriations. Agriculture is part of that too, so I get to write their budget as well. I think there's legitimate opportunity to grow North Carolina's agriculture business to $100 billion. That's just $23 billion more. Now, how are we going to do that? How are we going to do that? There are greenhouses in the triangle working on yield, increasing produce yield, that will change how farming occurs in Sampson County. There's your answer. It's answering the question. That's what research is about, in my opinion, is answering the question. It's a little less organic than just asking the next question. It's a little more tangible by answering. Let's get an answer. We need to increase yield on this crop. Let's do the research at NC State, and then let's deploy it in Sampson County and create jobs in both places. As agriculture grows in North Carolina, rural North Carolina will benefit. That has got to be central part of it. So you'll see that in the plan. Additionally, I think when I talk to folks from rural North Carolina, I don't think they feel like they've ever had a voice, honestly, in the Department of Commerce, and I think that's changed. There's a little bit. Having Secretary Decker coming out of Rutherford County, where there's been double-digit unemployment there for over a decade. So the recession came and left the triangle, but it's always been there in Rutherford County. Okay, and so I think having a real voice for rural North Carolina at the Department of Commerce, a direct link, and we're working on this public-private partnership with Commerce, and I think that's going to be net positive for rural North Carolina. So they have real people from Commerce in their community, working with their local chambers, working with their local business community to make sure there's a direct line. You don't have a Byzantine process to get an answer from Commerce on whether this project is eligible for this incentive or what. We need to have a direct line to Commerce to rural North Carolina, and that's part of it. And I think another key piece, and this doesn't have anything to do with STEM, but travel and tourism is a big part of rural North Carolina as well. And so that's not STEM specific, but that's a key piece from a jobs and economic development perspective. You got to keep your eyes wide open on travel and tourism and how rural North Carolina can benefit from that as well.
We have a question that came in from one of our regional groups that are watching us via live stream. It's not directed to anyone in particular. It says, do you have any insights on how we meet the infrastructure challenges that are important to STEM, like increased broadband in rural communities?
I think broadband I think as we address this smart grid, there's a huge opportunity for broadband initiatives when you start looking at smart metering and things like that, and how a responsive grid technology increases the amount of broadband. So I think the work that's going on in the clean tech cluster and the smart grid technology that's going on at NC State will be net positive for broadband access. We also have, Google Fiber is looking at Wake County in certain areas in Wake. So Google Fiber is working on one area, and then there's another company called RTS that has announced an initiative to make North Carolina the first 1 gigabit state. And so it's happening. It's happening right now, and there's a reason. There's a reason why it's happening, is because the private sector is asking for it, and I think that's the best way to address infrastructure issues is when the private sector asks for a need, there will be a private sector answer for it. And they're asking for it, and the private sector is answering the call, whether it's RTS, Google Fiber, or the clean tech smart grid folks right here at NC State.
I'll add just a little bit to that and and tell you that there mentioned Mr. Houston earlier that there's about 7 economic engines in North Carolina, major ones, Wake, Triangle, Triad, Charlotte, the like. We're not satisfied with economic prosperity in just those economic engines. We want economic prosperity and opportunity in every single one of the counties. If we have educated workforce, and specifically on STEM, where you are able to attract good businesses, they don't necessarily need to locate in the urban centers. They would easily get on there, provided you offer the quality education in STEM, provide you infrastructure, the road network, and all of that. And that's all part of our better North Carolina. We're committed to make sure that every 100 counties are prosperous. You don't want to look at Georgia with Atlanta. Okay, you look at North Carolina with 7 economic regional engines, and then every one of the counties surrounding it, because we have a workforce that can attract the best jobs. And again, being selective. We don't want any more $9 an hour jobs. We want the good jobs, okay?
I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank you both for speaking so eloquently about the importance of STEM here in North Carolina. One of the things we heard earlier today was the need to get the word out. You know, in the case of manufacturing, it's very different today than it was 30 and 40 years ago. And so there are a lot of career influencers as parents, there are teachers, administrators, coaches and the like who aren't steering kids into those types of careers. More generally, there seems to be a need for getting the word out about STEM occupations generally. Do you all foresee some sort of concerted statewide effort to try and to raise awareness about these career opportunities? And what role do you think perhaps government, the private sector, or both working together might play in that?
Well, I'll take the first hit, Tom, and then you can, if you look at what I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of unfilled jobs in North Carolina. I mean, I've talked with the Division of Employment Security, and we would love to have about 4,000 or 5,000 welders tomorrow. And those are good paying jobs. People that can get in there, work, and be proud of what they're doing. If you talk about the education system has to identify the fact that not only are they jobs that are near recession proof, but more importantly, they are high-paying jobs. We talked about 64% of better than rest of jobs in North Carolina. So not only are we trying to get them interested, and what is the best way, the teacher, the guidance counselor, and the like is able to say, this is a direction you need to consider going. And a lot of children are going to be reluctant, especially if they can't read. And that is a cornerstone to solving this problem. And we are taking the tough steps, and we have to expect everyone in this room and across the state to be active players in this. We cannot let that continue, because bottom line is you may recruit them, but if they're not capable, they're going to be frustrated and never achieve STEM education, which is what we need. We need for our state, they need it for their well-being in the future to be productive citizens.
I think the best thing we can do to get the word out on why you should go into STEM education is in the course catalogs published by our community colleges and our universities. They need to publish placement rates and salaries associated with every degree program. And I think we're selling some of our kids short by saying, come to this college, come to this degree program, and they get out and there's no jobs there. And we've got 100 seats to fill, but they graduate, walk across the stage, and there's 5 jobs, and there's 100 of them. And we've sold that kid short, and they've got debt now, probably, most definitely. And so I think the UNC Board of Governors, the Board of Governors that's looking at this hard on placement rates and salaries. You can survey this. You can survey this from graduates every year, and get 5-year data. Let's go. So 2001 placement rate, to 2010 placement rates in this career path and salary ranges for the same. It's data. And so I think we should publish that data to help kids make a decision on what they want to be when they grow up. In my house, when I was growing up, my dad made me choose that when I was a junior. And so I had to know when I was a junior what I was going to be when I grew up before I even went to college. And so I knew what courses I had to take. That's good parenting, by the way. And I didn't change my mind either until after I graduated and I went back to law school. But I'm still practicing pharmacy. But helping kids make the right decision so they don't waste time and figure out this is the wrong career path, whether it's in their junior year or too late when they've already got the degree and they can't find a job. And so I think publishing's placement data and salary ranges would be very helpful for our students on making that decision.
We have one more question from abroad. It says, beyond taxes and regulation, what are you hearing from STEM business and industry regarding what their needs are?
I can tell you a burgeoning issue that's really on my radar screen big is venture capital funding and how do we attract Class A to North Carolina. And if you got an answer to that, set up a shop here in the Triangle and you'll kill it because we have a shortage of venture capital funding in North Carolina. We basically have two VC funds, all the VC funds are either in Boston or Silicon Valley. And so I think that's just a challenge. Access to capital. I'm working on a bill called for crowdfunding. So you basically sell your idea to the internet and have a small in-state offering of $1 to $2 million. And instead of a friends and family type offering, you just offer it to anybody in small dollar investments. And so that's a bill that I'm working on to hopefully help with that seed capital type funding. So I think that's a major issue that I hear from the startup community especially is access to capital. I think tax reform is going to help that, but at the end of the day, you got to have a good idea to be able to sell it. But if venture capital doesn't look at North Carolina like they're looking at Silicon Valley or Boston, and it's a tough sell to get somebody to come from the Bay Area with their checkbook to North Carolina and write checks. And so I think there's some opportunities with the university system and proof of concept funding and using the private sector to look at Reach NC. If you haven't looked at Reach NC, I highly recommend you go to the website and look at all the amazing research that's going on in the state of North Carolina. I think we can use that data, look at the research to find the next big thing, fund the next big thing from proof of concept funding and with private sector input, and then attract venture capital because we've given them 5 good ideas. And so, I think there's an opportunity there as well. But at the end of the day, if it's not tax reform, it's not education, I'd say access to capital is the number one thing I hear from small business.
I will add that those folks in Silicon Valley or Boston, when they start looking at what North Carolina is doing with economic development, job creation, taxation, and the like, especially if they keep going up as high as they do, they're going to come here to North Carolina because they just run away from all that evilness of taxation in California and Boston and New York. And the article after article talks about the exodus of people with money coming. Secondly, we have the second largest banking center in the entire country. We took a little bit of a hit in this last recession. Not that we aren't coming back. I would wager that Wells Fargo will recognize the value of being on the East Coast and will make sure that it is well placed here in Charlotte, which is very valuable for North Carolina. You have B of A, Wells Fargo, that extra money that is there, along with the bill that Representative Murry talked about is a good idea and something that I want to spend more time talking with him about. But we'll find a way to generate the money, the capital that is necessary for innovative entrepreneurs to come to North Carolina, be part of the growth here,